Hi everybody, Cheryl and Lady coming to you from the Ladies Garden and Home. It is mid-July. We haven't even been hit yet with some intense heat, and yet it's time to think about the fall. Hope you join us. So we're entering this week what is typically 3 months to our first frost date, and 12 weeks. And 12 weeks is about the time that you start thinking towards the fall, and also you still have time to put in a succession of some crops and still have time to harvest some before the frost comes. Now, that being said, even though my average first frost date is October 15th for my area in southwest Connecticut, last year we didn't get a frost until mid-December, which was very unusual, but it also meant that I got a lot more weeks out of harvesting, which was great, so I'm not complaining. Not sure that's going to happen again, but we do still have time to get in more successions. So I'm going to be sowing. Actually, this is not a succession. This is the first time I'm sowing them this year. Zucchini, which the one that I have here is Black Beauty, and some golden crookneck summer squash. So I got a tip from a Facebook group I'm in, complaining about how last year all of my squash plants, my summer squash plants, were killed by the stupid squash vine borers. Was not happy. Somebody said to me, well, why don't you sow it when the squash bugs aren't around? So I said, well, that makes sense. These really only take 60 to 90 days to maturity. So I do have time. Actually, a zucchini is 50 days to maturity. So I do have time, and I'm going to be planting them out in August. So I actually started them by seed by sowing them indoors. So the next thing that I'm direct sowing are more pole beans. And I did a video on my three sisters' garden that includes corn, beans, and squash, and actually winter squash. I'll link that for you. But I planted, it was probably about a month ago, some pole beans, and I'm going to plant some more on the other side of the corn plot that I have. More beets. My beets are coming in lovely right now. The ones that I planted about 2 or 3 months ago. I don't know, I've been succession sowing them pretty much all season. And what I've got are the Detroit dark red beets, and the bull's blood beets, and early wonder tall top beet, which means they come to maturity a little bit quicker. Anyway, going to be doing some more of those. These come to maturity in 35 days for babies or 60 days to maturity. So we've got plenty of time for that, yep. And cucumbers. Now I have plenty of cucumber seeds here, but I'm going to try something. Yesterday I was harvesting and I realized one had gotten away from me. So this is probably supposed to be like a little pickling cucumber. I believe this was the Parisian pickling. And anyway, you see how it's yellow and a little orangey and swollen. It is way past the time that it would be tasty to eat. However, I'm going to harvest the seeds out of here and I'm going to plant them this week. So, and then Onions. Now, I did a video in the winter when I sowed onions in February. They're very, very slow to maturing. So, in fact, I haven't even harvested any real onions yet. But what I did was I ordered these sets, okay? Now, I don't know if you can see that in here, but they're sprouting actually in the bag. Now, what a set is, I'll open this up and I'll show you, is an onion that's already starting to bulb up. So these are pretty mature. So I want to get them out of this bag and into the ground soon because I don't want them to go moldy. But the idea with the sets is somebody started the seeds a while ago, so they've got a good couple of months growing already. And hopefully before the frost comes, or even if the frost comes, because last year I was able to overwinter some onions. So hopefully I'll get a nice harvest out of those before the frost comes. Oregano, I went away for a couple of days for a family reunion, which was wonderful. But my container oregano, the one that's been there for years, really, really dried up in the lack of rain. And anyway, it's not very healthy. I don't know if it's going to make it. So I'm going to start some more oregano. More parsley. I have a very mature plant right now that'll probably go to seed soon. I have a couple of them in one of my containers that are only about this big, and I'm going to start another plant. Basil. Now I have plenty of basil maturing in the garden right now, but I want a little bit of color in my green stalk, so I'm going to, this is called dark purple opal basil. Isn't that pretty? And more dill, because now that the cucumbers are coming in, a lot of my dill has already matured and flowered and are now producing seeds, which I'm harvesting, but I really want some more dill in the garden. Okay. So, oh, and Swiss chard. Swiss chard I have growing, a bunch of them. I like to eat this the same way I eat spinach in the winter. And, you know, I saute it. Of course, the younger leaves are great in a salad. And then more zinnias, because I have some zinnias coming in and just starting to bloom now. But with the heat, they'll probably grow very rapidly. Okay, now on to the fall. Okay, so next we're going to do what I'm sowing mostly indoors in seed trays for the fall. And some of these I'm also going to do another succession later, maybe end of August. So hopefully some of these will also overwinter. So what I mean by that is, and I did a video on how I overwintered some vegetables last winter. What I mean by that is if you cover them in some areas, like my zone is zone 7A, which means that my average lowest temperature is about 9 degrees Fahrenheit. That's, I'll figure out the Celsius and I'll put it in here somewhere. But anyway, if you cover them, they go through like a kind of a dormant period throughout the winter, but then in the early spring, they take off much faster than if you were to start them in the spring. So you have a little jump on the timing of when you can get your harvests. So anyway, so what I'm sowing for the fall, hopefully to eat in the fall, is broccoli, and I have a bunch of different varieties. One is Dietrich's Wild Broccoli Rob. This comes from the Hudson Valley Seed Company. And I really like them because, like this one specifically says, Northeast grown. a summer sown rob that overwinters. So I'm going to sow some now, and then I'm going to sow some, again, like I said, the end of August. This is green sprouting calabrese broccoli. These are sprouting broccolis, and I've had better luck with the sprouting broccolis, eating from the sprouts. So I figure it takes a little less time maybe to come to a full head. And then these are typically heading broccolis. Waltham 29 and DeChico. They don't have fancy packages, so. And these are still going to town in my garden. Now I've pulled some just to make room for some things like the tomatoes, but I still have 5 broccoli plants that I'm still, 5 broccoli plants that I'm still getting side shoots from and harvesting those. Mostly I'm just freezing them because they're coming kind of fast. So how much broccoli can you eat in like 1 week? But anyway, that's exciting. And then this one, Romanesco. I had one Romanesco plant that did wonderfully this year. I actually overwintered this one, and it was huge, and it had a head that looked pretty much just like that. And I cooked it. I basically just for 5 minutes in boiling salted water, and put a little butter and lemon sauce over it. Oh, it was so good. It was so good, so tender. That's the amazing thing about what I've noticed about the broccoli and the cauliflower and this Romanesco, which you can't even find this in a supermarket. But the broccoli and the cauliflower that you buy either frozen or in the vegetable section is not as tender as when it comes fresh out of your garden, let me tell you. Melt in your mouth. Anyway, Brussels sprouts. My Brussels sprouts also overwintered last year. I actually still have 2 plants in the ground now that I'm just basically waiting for them to form seed pods. But what was interesting is that they started bolting, meaning going to seed, pretty early in the spring, which was disappointing. But those round little cabbage type things turned into sprouts, which were delicious and a lot like broccoli rabe, only not as bitter. And then this one I tried last year. I think I got the timing wrong. It just did not work for me, but I'd like to try it again, and that is purple sprouting broccoli. Isn't that cool? This is one that's supposed to overwinter, although it takes a long time to grow, so that's why I'm starting it now. And it's supposed to be one of the earliest harvests of the year. So at a time when very, very little is growing or can be harvested in your garden, this will give you a crop, or it's supposed to if you grow it right. Cabbage. So this spring, I did Copenhagen cabbage, and I still have 2 that are growing. They're kind of in the middle of the corn bed, but I think because it's they're getting shaded by the corn, they're still growing nicely. They haven't, bolted yet. But this is premium late flat Dutch. Anyway, I'm going to try this for the fall. Cauliflower. And this is a hybrid that I got. It's called Twister Hybrid. And this is the kind of cauliflower that you don't have to twist up the leaves over the cauliflower when it starts to head up, because the leaves do that for you. It's bred so that the leaves do that. And the reason that you do that, whether you tie them up or you get this hybrid, is because you want to protect that cauliflower so it doesn't turn pink or yellow or something like that, and it's shaded so that it doesn't go to seed right away. Leeks. I have sprouting leeks right now. They're flowering that overwintered last year. They're tall. They're about 5 feet tall. And I have a patch growing. They're not near harvest yet, but I'm going to start some new leeks so that I have a succession of those. And then kale. Now, I'm not particularly fond of kale, I'll be honest. I mean, but this will grow in the fall and then also through the winter. So, and they're very pretty, I have to say that. So that's going to add a little visual interest to the garden. This is scarlet kale. Isn't that pretty? Red Russian, which is a red kale. And then this lacinato, which is like a very curly kale. So I'm going to do those. So I'd really like to get all my seed sowing that I'm doing indoors out of the way and finished by this weekend because my kitchen is a mess. Back into seed sowing mode. I've got compost and vermiculite and all of that stuff all over the place. And I actually did a video back in the winter about how I make my own potting mix. Still not sure if it saves me money. But I will say this, I had much more success with my recipe than I ever had before using the store-bought potting mix. I don't know. So say you haven't really gotten on board yet and you didn't start a summer garden. It doesn't mean that you still don't have time to put certain things in the ground, and it certainly doesn't mean that you can't have a nice fall garden. Anyway, I highly encourage you to, even if you wanted to do a couple of containers, there's still plenty of time to grow some food. I didn't touch on it yet, but things that I'm going to be starting, a month from now are things that don't like the heat very much or don't germinate well in the heat. Things like peas, carrots, spinach. So there's still plenty of time to get things growing and to help yourself save some money on your food bill. I don't have a lot of space. I do plenty of things in containers. I did purchase that green stalk, which was a wonderful investment. You can grow a lot of food in one of those tall tower things. Anyway, I hope you subscribe. I'm going to be shooting a bunch of videos coming up. I'm going to take you on a garden tour. Things are really starting to come to maturity. I'm starting to get peppers. I've got lots of tomatoes growing, none of them ripe yet. But anyway, I'm going to be shooting a tour soon. I'm going to be shooting my favorite ways to preserve herbs. I'm going to show you how you save some seeds so that you can even just have that as food security in the future. So I hope you subscribe. I hope you share this with people who also might want to start growing some of their own food. And anyway, I hope you like this video. If you did, please give it a like. And from the Ladies Gardening Home, enjoy your gardening journey. Bye! Say goodbye, lady.